It's the summer break, and we're here to fill the F1 void with some of your favourite Grid Talk mainstays. And I'm here also. So, welcome to the Grid Talk podcast. And today we are focusing on the teammate head to heads. Who is top dog? Who is looking over their shoulder? I'm your host, Tom Horrox. And to help you find out, I have with me today Tom Downey.
Hello, sir.
And George Howson.
Hello.
So, be sure to follow us on social media at Grid Talk UK, wherever you find the @ symbol. And if you're feeling extra generous, please consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive access and behind-the-scenes content like our Beyond the Grid Talk podcast and unfiltered takes as well. So we're going to be talking about the teammate battles. There's been lots of interesting happenings, some team switching. There's been some unexpected recoveries from other drivers. So we're going to start with basically where it kind of it all just falls apart, really. We'll start with Alpine, and we'll go with you, Tom, for this one. I know how much you love Alpine. So it's Franco Colapinto, Jack Doohan, and Pierre Gasly. Now, we only had Doohan in the car for 6 races. Neither driver, him or Franco, got any points. Their best position, both of them, was 13th. Their current table position is 20th and 21st. So basically, Gasly has wiped the floor of them on points with 20 points and a best position of 6th. And then the head-to-heads, it's 4-5-2-3, basically. So it's 4-2 and 5-3. So there's not much between it. What's your take, Tom, on Alpine's team? Who's done best there and why?
I think Flavio Briatore's done the best job in Alpine because he's absolutely transformed that team since he's come back in. Oh, it's good to be back and definitely not being sarcastic, not 30 seconds at the gate. No, I think it's fair to say that Pierre Gasly has carried that team on his back much in the same vein that Max carries Red Bull at the minute. He's dominated the teammates he's had. Doohan was a rookie coming in. As we know, he made his debut in Abu Dhabi last year. And Colapinto came in after having a good initial start to Williams last year and then tailing off quite a lot, which a lot of people like to forget. I mean, the qualifying head-to-head, like you said, it's 5-2 to Gasly against Colapinto. We'll see how many more teammates Gasly gets through by the end of the year. There's rumours of Paul Aaron coming back. Apparently Bottas is coming back in that car. I think he'll just wipe the floor with all of them. He has really taken the lead of that team as the number one driver in that team. He scored, I believe, all their points because we were the same before we started, or I should say you were saying that Colapinto's had 2 P13s, which is his peak so far in Alpine. Wow, go Colapinto. And Doohan peaked with a P13 and a P15, I think, which is what you said separates them on points. There's not really a lot to say. Alpine, dog of a team, dog of an engine, dog of a car, dog of management, dog of a second driver. Hang on, we're talking about Red Bull, and it's it just we say about Sauber waiting for the Audi money or whatever. With Alpine is waiting for the Merc power unit next year, because as soon as they can get rid of that Renault heap of rubbish that's in the back of the car, redesign that chassis. The new regulations can't come quick enough for them. This is a sodding works manufacturer, Alpine. Well, it's about to not be, quite funny. And the fact that they are at the bottom of the grid once again, quite funny, isn't it? So it's not. Yeah, it's been a really, really poor season after they made some good progress at the end of last season, including that miracle double podium. I don't think we're going to be seeing any Alpine podiums anytime soon. Gasly's going to carry on carrying the team on his back, putting up with the ridiculous management that goes on at Alpine. And the second driver's seat, well, who knows? It's a lottery, isn't it?
It's so good to have you back, Tom. Really, really missed podcasting with you. It's really good fun. Yeah, I mean, you say what we don't want to say. But yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I tried to find some balance in this one, and I couldn't really see anything of Doohan seemed to be on a decent trajectory. Franco has had his moments, but it's just been a complete one-sided obliteration. But moving on to the other team, beginning with A, as we're going in alphabetical order, if you want to predict how we're going to be running this today, you're going to talk about Aston Martin, George. Now, normally, this would be a bit of a world champion goes and destroys Daddy's plaything in the second seat. But this season, 26 points, both of them. Current best finish was 5th and 6th, respectively. Alonso with the 5th, which is what puts Alonso ahead of Stroll in the table, both 11th and 12th. The head-to-heads, though, Alonso 9-5 in Grand Prix, which is better than it normally is, but the qualifying head-to-head still 13-1. in Alonso's favour. Is it business as usual and just Alonso having a bad start, or is Stroll on a much more better footing now?
I think there's a few factors to be fair. I mean, I don't know if this what the actual correct stat is. I've got Alonso 14-0. Got him whitewashing Stroll completely in qualifying. But either way, it's incredibly one-sided in that regard. I mean, people were saying earlier on the season when Stroll was ahead of Alonso by a decent margin. Oh, Stroll, he's finally showing his quality. He's showing that he's better than Alonso now. It's like, no, it's not though. It's just bad luck for Alonso. He had two really bad retirements for mechanical failures and stuff like that earlier on in the season. Monaco was a particularly heartbreaking one. I think he was on for about a P5 or a P6 in that race. So that was a huge one. Aston Martin have showed some real flashes of brilliance. Stroll looked like he might have got a podium at Silverstone, didn't quite work out that way. They were very, very solid at the Hungarian Grand Prix. There's been some really impressive performances here and there, and they've kind of shot up to sixth place in the constructors' standings now. They're now the closest challengers to Williams. I do feel like maybe Stroll is getting a bit better. I mean, it's about time. He's like in his eighth or ninth season at this point. Maybe the car is suiting him a bit better as well. It's an evolution rather than a revolution like every single team. So maybe a bit more experience in the same car is helping him. Alonso has been showing his quality at times though, of course. So I think overall, I expect Alonso to now take that lead and just go ahead of Stroll and, not be caught at that point. But Stroll, to his credit, as much as it pains me to say, as hard as it is for me to say it, I think he's been better. He has shown some absolutely idiotic moments, of course, as well. That grid penalty at Monaco being one of them. Why are you going and doing that to Charles Leclerc? But overall, I think he's been better. And Aston Martin, I think, can be pretty optimistic heading into the second half of the season.
So I ask you the question, is it that Stroll is getting better or is it that Alonso is finally getting worse?
It's hard to say. I mean, Alonso's what, like 44 now, something like
He's
that.
older than me. That's why I still hold out hope of a Formula One career.
Yeah,
so I'm just gonna correct as well on that. So Stroll qualified ninth in China, and Alonso was a non-classification. So was it he was disqualified after qualifying? Is that what it was potentially? So he may well. I have to remember the circumstances, but yeah, according to my spreadsheet, he's qualified ninth, and Alonso was way back in 17th. So that's where I've got that from. But again, that may well be a technicality, and it may well technically be a whitewash. But sorry, I interrupted you.
It's all right. Either way, it's incredibly one-sided in qualifying, without a doubt, whichever one it is. I think it's potentially maybe a bit of both. I mean, I feel like Alonso at this age, we don't have really a kind of litmus test for this. We don't have an example. I mean, Graham Hill was the last guy to race at this age, so it's difficult. I would say perhaps Stroll is getting better. Maybe it seems to be whenever he has these injuries, he seems to get better after him. And obviously, he had his wrist injury occur this season, so maybe it's a bit of both. I think next season will be really, really telling though, because that is when the experience should show. You're going into a big regulation change. That's when you lean on your experienced drivers. And these two are both very experienced drivers. Lance Stroll is the most experienced Canadian driver in Formula One history in terms of race starts. So if Lance Stroll is miles behind a 45-year-old Lonzo at that point next year, it's a really, really bad look. And I think that's probably what's going to happen, to be honest.
Yeah, it's the curious case of Lance Stroll, isn't it? We never really know what's going to come from him, whether he's going to be great or whether he's going to be middling. I do think that as the cars get better, he does get better as well. I think in a bad car, he gets destroyed. In a good car, he does tend to be fairly close to Fernando Alonso. So we are going to move on now, and I'm saving you, George, the pain of talking about Lewis Hamilton as we're moving to Ferrari, Tom, and you get that honour. So it's very stark reading for Lewis Hamilton fans. I mean, we expected Leclerc to probably shade Hamilton, definitely beat him in qualifying, and then see what happened in the races. But 151 points to 109. Best finish was a third to a fourth for Leclerc to Hamilton. I don't, or did Leclerc get a second? I may have that wrong. I think Leclerc may have a second in there. Current table, fifth to sixth, but a big gap. But the Grand Prix head-to-heads, which is what we expected to be close, 11-2 in Leclerc's favour, with 11-3 in qualifying. I'm assuming that's because there was a double disqualification in there for China, maybe, or something like that. So, yeah, on to you, Tom. The floor is yours.
Yeah, Ferrari. Oh my God, I'm as painful as it is being a Red Bull fan at the minute. I am so glad I'm not a Ferrari fan, because the trials and tribulations of following Maranello, my word, I don't think my blood pressure could take it. And yeah, I think Hamilton is having the true Tifosi experience. His second or third race weekend into the season, he gets sprint pole and wins a sprint race for for Ferrari in China. No, it was the second race because Liam Lawson was still a Red Bull driver. Remember those days? Pepperidge Farm, remember. And Hamilton, still won that weekend, and I remember watching that. I stayed up to watch it 3 a.m. in the UK. I think China should be a night race, and it was, it felt like we were watching Hamilton of a few years ago when, yes, he put it on pole and led from the start and all the rest of it. And I know it's only a sprint and blah blah blah, but it still doesn't diminish that he has the skill to lead a pack like that, and he still led the field from Max, who is the most successful sprint race winner. Not that I think Max really cares about that, to be honest. I'm sorry, I'm talking about him a lot when I shouldn't be. But, Hamilton has had some of those highs, and then to go from that into the lows of having that double DSQ in China and his radio, I'm not going to call it a meltdown, that's not fair, but his radio outburst where he was understandably, and I'd say justifiably, very annoyed at the team in Miami, where he came out with some really sarky comments. I actually really like that because I'm, a few people who know me will know, you two will know that I'm quite petty and quite sarcastic. Really? No. And that spoke to my soul a bit, hearing him sort of like be very sort of ooh, cat claws coming out kind of thing. So he's had the sort of full Ferrari experience already. It's taken him a little while to adjust to that car. And, he spent so long in that Mercedes team. He spent so long in McLaren. Before that, he's always driven Mercedes power units. Yes, obviously he went from the V8 to the turbo hybrid V6s. But my point is he's always been in the wider Mercedes family. And he's moved to something completely different. New team, new power unit, new race engineer who he seems to have a on and off relationship with. I think is one way of putting it. New, and not just the new sporting stuff, the new culture, everything. Because obviously the Ferrari culture is very different to certainly how McLaren would have done, probably to how Mercedes do it. We all know what the McLaren days were like when Ron Dennis was there, and we know how efficient of a ship Mercedes is run under Toto, even if they're not quite there at the minute. So it's been a huge change of scenery for him, and also he is in his 40s. Let's not forget that. I think he's 41, or he might have been 40. I can't remember. I know he's in his 40s. So again, he's no spring chicken. Sorry, Tom. And he's got a lot of pressure on him because he is statistically the most successful driver we've ever had, and there is no doubt he is one of the best drivers we've ever seen. And Hamilton in his prime was something else, especially that early Mercedes era. Man, he was so, I'm not a fan, but he was so good. And I think people who thought they were going to get that Lewis at Ferrari, they might have had their expectations a little bit too high because he is on that natural decline, as we sort of just talked about with Alonso at Aston. These chaps are getting on a bit. And the other thing with Ferrari is they've got the golden boy there. Leclerc, who has obviously been sort of nurtured through the whole academy, was put in that Sauber in 2018 alongside Marcus Ericsson, a real test of a teammate, that one. And then obviously, sort of put into the seat in 2019, won a few races in that slightly dubious car in his first year, and has sort of been the next thing for Ferrari, essentially. He's come through the academy, and, he's been sort of like earmarked as, well, the next best thing for that team. And it's almost good in a way that Ferrari aren't in a championship winning position, because if they had to pick between the two drivers, who would they pick? I still think they'd pick Leclerc. Leclerc has been statistically the better driver this year, but I think that's also due to Leclerc being more comfortable in that car. He's been in the Ferrari family for, well, God knows how long now. He's obviously been in the main team since 2019, and Hamilton is a new person coming in. So we saw Hamilton be really hard on himself after Hungary, where he was like, "Oh, they just need to change things." Is that no? They don't. I said, you're fine. The car isn't great. Hungary is a tough circuit, and if you don't have a compliant chassis and a compliant setup, you are just going to understeer and wallow and wash everywhere, and that's exactly what happened. He's been quite hard on himself. I think that is sort of like his thing. That is what he does, and it rubs some people up the wrong way. I get that. He's got next year on his contract. We'll see what the 2026 car brings, because he'll have a year under his belt. I think this year he's just got to chalk it up, suck it up, take the L, realise that Leclerc is unfortunately for some people, going to have the better of him for this year, because Leclerc's been in that team for so much longer. All the rest of it, he's younger. He's coming into his prime, I would argue. And yeah, it's Yeah, it's just made a bit grim reading for Ferrari fans this year. So we'll see.
Yeah, I really wanted to be a Ferrari fan this year, but it's so hard. It's so hard, especially when McLaren are doing so well. How can I possibly be a Ferrari fan? At the start of the season, it's like, do you know what? McLaren could win the Constructors' Championship again and Hamilton gets his 8th championship. I'll be happy with that. I'd never cheer for a Ferrari to win over a McLaren normally, but I'll be happy with that. But no, it's too difficult. It's too difficult to support Ferrari. So I really want Hamilton to succeed there and at least get on a similar level to Leclerc to kind of quieten the haters for the last few years. But I do agree that I think his prime probably was 2020, 2019, around that time. He was still excellent in 21, but yeah, I just feel that this regulation set has led him astray. So we never know. Next year, he might be a completely changed man and back on the level of Leclerc. I would be surprised if he was. But we're moving on now to the Haas team, George, a team obviously supplied by Ferrari with Hamilton's potential replacement, Esteban Ocon's teammate there in Oliver Behrman. Behrman's shown some good pace, but he has looked quite mistake prone. The points looks heavily in Ocon's favour, 27-10. Best Grand Prix finish 5-8 in Ocon's favour. Current table 8th to 19th. Given there's only 16 points between them, the table between 8th and 19th shows how close it is. Grand Prix head-to-heads 9-5 and an even spread of 7-all on qualifying. So what's your thoughts on the Haas pairing? And is this just smoothing off the rough edges for Behrman? Is Ocon going to be worried in the second half of the season? Or is it Ocon's experience?
I think Ocon's experience is really helping when it comes to driving this car. Like you said, it's not a huge gap in terms of points, but in terms of the placings, it's massive. You know, the only guys that are below Behrman are the Alpine second drivers throughout this season. So, i.e., the guys don't have any points. So, yeah, I'd be a bit worried if I was Behrman, to be honest with you. I do feel for the guy. He has made some very bad rookie errors. I mean, that one at Silverstone, I've brought it up a few times, but that one at Silverstone is just, that's just awful. But he hasn't scored any points in Grand Prix. If you don't count the sprint points he's got at Belgium, he hasn't scored any points in a Grand Prix since Bahrain. Now, that was an incredible drive, as was his drive in China as well. You know, so he has got some serious talent in that car. He has shown that. I do feel like the car has kind of slipped away a little bit. I mean, Ocon's results of late have not been that great. He hasn't scored any points in a Grand Prix in the last 3 races either. So I feel like Haas is starting to slip away. And it would seem like it was going to be a very positive season for them this season. But we'll have to see what happens as that kind of evolves. But yeah, I think that the experience for Ocon is showing. I mean, I said coming into this season, I wouldn't be surprised if Behrman beats Ocon throughout this first season because I don't really rate Ocon that highly. But clearly this season so far, it's suiting him a lot better. You know, he's done well in his first season at Haas because he's new to that team as well. And credit where it's due, Ocon's done some good performances as well this season. So right now, I wouldn't be worried if I was Ocon when it comes to Behrman. I'd be more worried about the car and where the team seem to be going because they do seem to be going down to the bottom at this rate. And if Alpine get an absolute miracle like they did in Brazil last year, they'll be last. So I think Haas can be very much worried. I think their drivers have been relatively solid this season so far, though.
Yep. They've both been, like I said on my introduction there about Behrman, those flashes of speed. He does look very strong, but just there's too many mistakes. That Silverstone mistake was just unforgivable. Is the right word. And to be honest, a very, very dangerous incident. And yeah, just disappointing from that side of things. But Haas, as I say, you know, if Haas are not bottom, that's a successful season. So I still think that if they can make hay while the sun shines, then they've got a good chance. But yeah, potentially haven't made enough hay at the moment. So, but yeah, we're moving on now to the McLaren team, Tom, and I'm sure you've got some choice things to say about this. I'm looking forward to this one. But the two guys there, Norris and Piastri, so close on points, so close on every possible measuring metric. 284 points for Piastri, 275 for Norris. Best finish, both obviously a first. Current table, 1st to 2nd for Piastri. Grand Prix head-to-head, 7-all. And qualifying head-to-heads, 8-6. So in Piastri's favour. So is that the difference? Is it that Piastri's just stepped up a little bit in qualifying and a little bit in race pace? So what's more impressive for you as well? Is it Oscar's improvement or is it Lando's response to Oscar's improvement? Because both are quite impressive.
You should have asked me this a few races ago. I'd have said Oscar, obviously, the lead driver. And he's still the one I'm backing for the championship because I think he's just got it a bit more. But yes, Oscar has improved his race pace. Sorry, not his race pace. He's really improved his quality pace because that was one of his sort of things last year which wasn't quite there. And one of the things we definitely discussed that needed working on. Since then, I would say that there's not a lot to separate these two. I would say Oscar's arguably, not even arguably, I would just say Oscar's been the more consistent driver because he's had fewer mistakes. The biggest mistake he's had was going off in the wet in Australia at the start of the season, which I believe was his worst result as well. Lando, we've seen him be more prone to errors. He's had some qualifying errors. There was obviously the crash in Jeddah when he drove into the back of Oscar in Canada as another example, when he just got a bit of tunnel vision, as we saw, and he just tried the Ayrton Senna thing and just didn't went for a gap that didn't exist, and that gap really didn't exist. So it was it's there's such fine margins between the two McLaren drivers. Like I said, Oscar's been the more consistent driver. He's obviously worked on errors or sort of things that needed working on in the past. Lando, I feel like it is there for him, but he's doing his best to really chuck it away and sort of not make it easy. Or maybe he's got a contract with Netflix. Who knows? He's trying to give them a storyline for Drive to Survive. Put that car down, sir. And I only just noticed that on my screen for audio listeners. They just held up his leg a McLaren and just like making brum brum faces. I don't know who's the biggest child, him or his son. And it's hardly anything to sort of separate the two drivers. Like I said, I prefer Oscar because the way he's got that sort of like ice cold nature. I would really like that because we have seen some cracks in that. We saw it in Silverstone with the safety car thing, and that was absolutely his fault. I'm not getting into that. And then we saw it in Hungary where he knew his fight was against Lando and not against anybody else because he knows what the wider game is. So, both drivers know what's going on and they don't want to leave anything on the table. And I think had Oscar won going into this break that we're currently in, my answer would have changed a bit. But given that Lando won the last two before the summer break, did he win? No, who won Belgium?
He's won 2 out of 3.
Yeah,
Oscar won Belgium.
Oh, of course he did.
So
yeah, Lando won Silverstone.
He's won 3 out of the last 4. He won Austria, Silverstone, and Hungary, and then Oscar won Belgium.
That's it, yeah. I couldn't remember which way around that was. So, especially with not having Spa right before after the summer break, it's really throwing me now. Yeah, if you'd have asked me then, I'd have absolutely said that Oscar sort of had the upper hand, but Lando has been clawing it back, and it's still all to play for with those two. So it's I mean, at the minute it's almost like a case of flip a coin to see who you think the better driver has been. There is obviously a bit of sort of not divide, but there's a bit of questioning going on in that team because Zach is when Lando wins or makes an overtake when he's lapping someone, he seems to puff his chest out like a peacock or something. And then when Oscar wins, it's like, oh yeah, he's the other driver. So to me, there seems a bit of imbalance there. But I also know that Andreas Talla is a big fan of Oscar. So, it goes both ways. I think it also brings a bit to both their natures. So, yes, to summarize that, McLaren, yeah, I mean, they've both been excellent this year. They've both got room for improvement. Nothing is ever perfect apart from you two. And it'll be interesting to see how the remaining 10 races of this year unfold.
Yeah, I really think we may have a situation, unless one driver can come out and really steal a march in the second half of the season. I think we're going to have a 2021 situation where it's going to be the finest of margins, and it's going to be something like, I mean, fortunately, Latifi isn't on the grid anymore, but it's going to be something that happens in a race which inconveniences one of the drivers that's going to decide the championship. And whoever wins this championship, the fans of the other one will say, well, there's an asterisk against that. I think it's going to be one of those type of seasons, which is going to be a real shame for them. I mean, I just hope that whoever wins the other one gets another chance after next year, because they both deserve to be world champions. My personal bias will be Lando, because he was there on the ground doing all the yards, and then this generational talent swanned in to steal his championship. But I really hope that both drivers do win the championship at some point. But if you are enjoying this podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening and not currently subscribed to the channel, please do so and help us out with a subscribe and tell all your friends about us. So, George, moving on to the Mercedes team, then you get to talk about your namesake and Kimi Antonelli. George, near domination and surprising quite a few of us with how much further ahead he's been of Antonelli, given how much Antonelli was talked up before the start of the season. It's 172 points to 64. Obviously, we've got George has had a win. Antonelli has had a third. Fourth to seventh in the championship. The Grand Prix head-to-head 14-0, I've got it, unless my stats are wrong again, and 13-1 for qualifying. So I was actually shocked. When I was working out all these stats this morning, I was looking through and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be painful for Antonelli now. And I go for it, I was like, wow, I didn't realize it was quite that bad. I mean, 14-0 head-to-head, that's... Even when Antonelli was celebrated for being on the podium, his teammate was there on the top step. So it's... Has it really been? Are we not giving George enough credit here? Because we shouldn't be surprised. The guy put Lewis Hamilton away 2 out of 3 seasons. So, like, are we just being harsh on George here and not giving him enough credit, or is Antonelli genuinely having a bad season?
I don't think he's genuinely having a bad season. I mean, you got to look at Antonelli. He's 18 years of age. I mean, people will say, "Oh, well, this was the most talked about rookie, with possible exception of Max Verstappen, since Sir Lewis Hamilton joined the grid." But you got to remember that Hamilton joined the grid when he was 22 years of age. What would Antonelli be like with another 4 years of lower formula experience under his belt, racing his super formula, or more years in F2? Because let's remember that obviously last year he was still in F2. That was his debut season. He didn't walk away with the championship. You know, he showed some real flashes of brilliance, but he wasn't the champion. He wasn't even close. I think it was like 7th place or something like that. So I don't think it's a huge surprise that he's a long way off George Russell, partly because, yeah, George Russell's really good. George Russell is having the best season he's had in Formula One, bar none, this season. He has taken the mantle up as being the team leader this year and ran with it, and he's been superb. He's been neck and neck with Max Verstappen, in albeit a much worse car, that Red Bull, I do believe, but he's not that far off being best of the rest behind the McLarens. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. Like you, I was shocked at how one-sided it's been. I expected it to be one-sided. You know, Russell almost has triple the points of Antonelli, but I was not expecting 14-0, a complete whitewash. Like, you know, not even like Lance Stroll and Alonso. Alonso has lost out to Stroll in some races, you know, but it's been the same in qualifying as well. You just got to take things with a grain of salt at the end of the day. You know, Antonelli's very young, he's very raw, he's going to learn, he's shown flashes of brilliance. He had that podium in Canada. As we covered in a previous show, it has been a while since he's, you know, scored consistent points. I feel like he has gone off the boil a little bit recently, not quite been showing the pace that we kind of expected. Like I was really disappointed with him at Spa, for example. But even the experienced drivers struggled at Spa. Hamilton was shocking during qualifying for Spa as well. So it can happen to anybody, you know. So I think he needs to pick himself up, dust himself off, and, you know, just be solid in the last part of this season. He'll be fine. Nobody at Mercedes, including Toto Wolff, of course, is going to expect him to be anywhere near George Russell in the championship. He just needs to show a little bit of consistency. But he's also not raced on a lot of these tracks. And if he has raced on them before, he's raced in Formula 2, which is a completely different discipline. So, yeah, I think George Russell really has been superb. He's been, without a doubt, one of the drivers of the season. And he's made Antonelli look very average, but I expect Antonelli to improve a lot, especially next year as he gets more familiar with F1 and the team as well.
Yeah, all fair points. It's if people are jumping on Antonelli and piling onto him, but I just think George Russell is just such a good driver. I think we're forgetting. What were we doing at 18, lads? Come on. Well, I can't even remember what I was doing at 18. I think I went out for a meal at the Hungry Horse with my mum and dad. And on his 18th birthday, he's probably testing a Formula One car. So, like, come on, let's cut the guy some slack. He's 18. So, yeah, let's see what happens in the second half of the season. I do expect an improvement from him, and I think he does need to improve. But, yeah, certainly don't need to be piling on at the moment. So, Racing Bulls up next then. Now, we've had Lawson and Tsunoda in that car, but Tsunoda's just the 2 races there. So, I think we'll probably disregard Lawson in that sense. But Hadjar, 22 points. Lawson has got 20 points. 2 races in the Red Bull, obviously, but no score for that one. So no advantage there. Best finish of 6th for Hadjar versus an 8th for Lawson. Current table, 13th to 14th. So they're quite close there. Head-to-head's 8-3, though, with a 9-3 qualifying advantage there. So how do you think Lawson has recovered from his demotion? And Hadjar, it's easy to forget that he's a rookie because he's looked very at home in Racing Bulls.
Yeah, I mean, Hadjar and Lawson had almost opposite starts of the season, where Hadjar started, well, apart from Australia, started really strongly, was getting really, really good results, putting that Racing Bulls into Q3. And Lawson, as we know, did 2 races at Red Bull and then got immediately dropped. Yeah, it's gone really quite well for Racing Bulls this year, because I think it was 2 years ago they were looking like the worst team on the grid and then finally picked it up. Obviously, there's been a recent change in management because obviously Lauren Mekis is gone, and Main, I believe, is now the team principal, or it might be someone else. But I know he's one of the head honchos of that team. So it's gone pretty well for them. Lawson, after his sort of demotion, which I think he took quite hard, and I mean it was pretty brutal. Let's be real. He took a little while to sort of tidy some things up and to get sort of back into the groove. But once he did get back into the groove, we have seen some of the things which makes him a good driver, and we have seen some good races from him recently. Hadjar, after such a good start, has not fallen off the wayside. That's not fair. But as midfield teams have caught up, that midfield is so tightly contested now because you've got the likes of Sauber actually scoring points and getting Hulkenberg a sodden podium, which we'll talk about later on. You know, there are so many like things which can influence a race, and there are some circuits which Hadjar obviously hasn't driven on in F1 before. Lawson, I talked about this with Jawed on one of our sister shows, which he and I do, which is our driver ratings, which is basically minutes just talking nonsense for 40 minutes. Then Lawson has now driven every circuit on the calendar that's on the calendar in an F1 car at last. So, you know, he's got some experience, if you like, under his belt. He still hasn't done a full year in one team. So I still think he's sort of under that rookie banner. Obviously, Hadjar, his first time in an F1 car, you know, in a sort of in a racing season this year. That's one of those where he was coming in because he was a Red Bull driver, Red Bull Academy driver, I should say, and Red Bull needed someone to fill that seat, a bit like Albon in sort of 2019. And it actually turns out that he's done really well. I don't think any of us expected him to be as good as he was, and he's done a really, really good job. When I saw him spin out in Australia, I thought to myself, oh no, here we go. But then he redeemed it in some fine style with, you know, some fantastic qualifying performances, regularly in Q3, got some good points sort of hit here and there, and he's just been doing pretty well overall. So yeah, Lawson, he took a little while to sort of get better, come back, and now he's sort of just flying under the radar, which is what I've been saying. That's just what he needs to do. So yeah, the Racing Bulls, they're sort of just ticking along nicely at the minute. They're nice and stable.
Yeah, absolutely. The much more placid car, a bit easier to drive, has definitely favoured Hadjar. I really hope Hadjar doesn't get a promotion to the Red Bull team, just because I think that will probably finish his career, and it's a shame. He needs a good crack at F1, couple of seasons in a slightly more benign car. But we're going to move on to the Red Bull now. So as we already discussed there, ignoring Lawson's stint as it was pretty much non-existent anyway, George, you've got Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda. So do we even need to look at the stats? 187 points to 10, 9th place best finish for Tsunoda. We know Max's best position finish. 18th in the table to 3rd. 11-1 for Grand Prix head-to-head, and qualifying 12-0. The floor is yours on Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen racing, yeah. I mean, it's incredibly one-sided. We've covered it so many times here. I mean, you've got a car that probably doesn't suit Max Verstappen that much, but he's able to just drive around it and drive the wheels off it and pull off some incredible performances. Even in qualifying, I think he's only like one behind the overall record for pole this season. I think like Piastri's got one more than him, or Lando Norris has got one more than him, or something like that. So yeah, he's pulling off absolute miracles in that car. Tsunoda struggling with it, just like Lawson did, just like Gasly did before him, Albon before him, Perez before him. It's the same old story. It'll be Hadjar next year. I predicted Hadjar to get the promotion to Red Bull next year. I think it'd be an unbelievably dumb decision, but that's just Red Bull racing in a nutshell, isn't it? Let's be honest here. So it'll probably happen. I think Tsunoda's a good driver, and he's shown that many times in the AlphaTauri Racing Bull, whatever the car was called in that particular season over the years. And even this year, he's had some good results. I'm sure when he got his last points in Imola, he came from like the back of the grid as well, albeit crashed in qualifying spectacularly, but still recovered well in the race. Fair play to him. So, you know, he has shown that he can get on top of that car, but those points in Imola were the last ones he scored. So we're just going to get more of the same in the last part of the season. The big question is Tsunoda going to be able to get more points in that car? Because it doesn't seem to be getting better. It seems to be, if anything, getting worse as maybe other teams develop the cars a little bit. that is firmly for me the fourth fastest car at best. And in Tsunoda's hands, it's like the seventh or eighth because he just cannot control that bucking bronco of a Red Bull. It's just impossible for him.
Yeah, I think it's a harsh season as well. With Snowden didn't get his preseason in that car either, so I think if he'd had a preseason, he might have actually done slightly more with it. But yeah, it's considering Lawson had it when it was probably at its most competitive and did absolutely nothing with it. Hasn't really helped the situation either. But we are going to move on to slightly more of a competition then, Tom. So you get to talk about Sauber. So we've got the incredibly experienced Nico Hulkenberg finally getting his podium, and the rookie Gabriel Bortoleto. Now it's 37 points to 14, so that would look like Hulkenberg is dominating, but the podium doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Third to sixth best finish. Current table 9th to 17th, again looking very one-sided towards Hulkenberg, but the Grand Prix head-to-head just 8 to 6, and qualifying 10 to 4 in favour of Gabriel Bortoleto, which was something unless I've made a mistake, that is a very strong qualifying performance there. So do the points tell a story, or is Gabriel Bortoleto's trajectory more of a story here?
I think it's a mix of the two. So Bortoleto, obviously back-to-back F3, F2 champ, he's come in and he's immediately done well in that car, which is not a good car at all. Well, certainly wasn't, but now it's definitely up there in the midfield. Like you said, I do think there's a bit of a point sort of bias with the Hulkenberg podium, and because obviously that gave him 15 points, which is a pretty big swing for a team which doesn't score points every weekend. We have seen some very, very good drives from Hulkenberg. You know, he's done, after some pretty bad qualifying performances, he's managed to drive through the field a bit and pick up some points finishes, like he's done like 19th to 9th or something like that, or 16th to like 8th and stuff like that. He's done some very, very good drives in that sense. Obviously, the podium is the standout performance. Bortoleto, he has been good this year. Like I said, he's a rookie. He's getting used to being in F1, and it's such a step from F2 to F1 that he's going about it the right way. So, you know, he's not overdriving the car. Yes, he spun out in Silverstone, but, you know, those conditions in a car which you're not that familiar with, or, you know, in a series which you're not that familiar with, which is the pinnacle of motorsport, apparently, you know, is always going to be difficult. So, you know, he has done well in that sense. He'll be learning a lot from Hulkenberg as well. I think Bortoleto has already shown some real sort of like signs of why he was picked by that team, and, you know, I'm surprised that McLaren let him go, but McLaren, there is no room. But you can see why he was picked up as a driver, you know, by a sort of top team to begin with. So yeah, I think Bortoleto has probably a higher ceiling, but with that, and it will come in time with that experience. There are rumours about him potentially being dropped for next year. I think that would be a huge mistake. You know, that it's something to do with Audi or something. I heard some rumours about that. Which I think would just be one of the dumbest decisions made. You know, sort of like for this season. That kid is going places. He's doing exceptional things in that car at such a young age, and he's part of this new generation of good talent we've got coming through.
Yeah, that would be an absolutely insane decision to drop Gabriel Bortoleto, and I think the second half of the season will show just how good he is. I think we're going to see some good things from him in the second half of the season. Final team we're talking about today then, George, is Williams. Now, one of the best driver pairings on the grid, the best if you believe the team principal, Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. So looking at it there, 54 to 16, it's very strong in Albon's favour. 5th to 8th is the best Grand Prix finish in Albon's favour. Current table 8th to 16th, big old gap there. Grand Prix head-to-heads 9 to 4 and 8 to 6 in qualifying. So it's a bit of it's across all metrics, it's an Alex Albon victory in the first half of the season. Is Sainz's consistency the issue? As he has looked a match for Alex at times, but there's no real linear progress there.
He's been making a lot of sounds about, a lot of noise about him not getting on with the car as well, that Williams basically have made a car that's a bit difficult for him to drive like he'd normally want to drive, because as we've seen from Carlos Sainz for years and years, when he was at Ferrari, when he was at McLaren, he was very consistent. He is a driver that does not usually struggle for consistency. So I don't think it's him that's the problem. I feel like the car just doesn't suit him as well. And you've also got Alex Albon, who has been there since 22. I think he's been there for a number of years anyway. And he obviously knows the team inside and out. And, you know, experience counts massively when it comes to these cars in terms of how comfortable you are and how able you are to push them. And I also think as well that, yes, Carlos Sainz, I think, is a great driver, but I also think Alex Albon's a fantastic driver too. He's shown this for years. It's not a surprise. When he came into Formula One for Toro Rosso. He's promoted to the Red Bull Racing team within half a season. And he only struggled at that Red Bull team because everybody else struggles. Everywhere else he's been, he's done really well, in my opinion. So I don't think we should be surprised that Albon's better. I am surprised that Albon is doing this better, but I feel like the key metric for them two, or at least what Carlos Sainz should be clinging on really, is that it's to the qualifying. It's really close. It's just a couple races between them in terms of their positions in qualifying, in terms of the performance there. So over one lap, there's not a lot between them, but over the race distance, Sainz is struggling in that car, and I feel like next year he'll do a lot better because it's a clean slate for everybody, and I imagine they'll make a car that is going to suit both of them. Especially when they've got someone as intelligent as James Vowles in the team. You wouldn't design a car that's only good for one of your drivers. No team should do something so stupid like that. Red Bull, I'm talking to you on that one.
What a great way to finish this team section off. I really missed F1. I wanted to get back. This has been a great season. I wanted to carry on. But one thing we're going to do before we finish is a quick one-liner on who you think has done the best job against their teammate, and also give us some information about what to follow and where to follow you. So, Tom, tell us about you, where we can follow you, and who do you think has done the best job against their teammate so far?
I don't have socials, so good luck with that one. What I will say is just follow the Grid Talk socials, which I've already done the plug for, but got it at Grid Talk UK. Check us out. DM me. HMU, as the kids say. No, in terms of oh god, I can tell I'm rusty. In terms of my driver who's done the best head to head, I'm going to say Gabriel Bortoleto, because he's coming to a Sauber, and yes, his team has got a podium, but he's been really, really good in that car. And like I said just now, he's got a higher ceiling, and I think there is a lot to come with that young man.
Fantastic. I didn't expect that. I thought it would be someone a bit further up the grid, but well done you. So yeah, that's a really good shout. Okay, George, tell us where people can follow you and who has won the teammate battles for you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Formula Reports. I love talking about Formula One, everything to do with it inside and out. So you can head over to our YouTube, Facebook. You can head over to our Microsoft as well. It's our website, f1chronicle.com, and Substack as well. I believe we're still the largest F1 community on Substack in the world. I'm going to keep saying that until someone corrects me. But it's a tough one to say, because if you just go purely by the numbers, you got to say somebody like Max Verstappen or George Russell. Max Verstappen beating his teammate is no surprise at all. Russell beating his teammate Antonelli to this extent, I think, is a bit of a surprise. But I'm going to go for Charles Leclerc. To beat a 7-time world champion in equal machinery, as Nico Rosberg loves to say, is not very easy at all. And I think he's really shown his quality. People can say, "Oh, Hamilton's washed, Hamilton's done, he's a has-been," and he's literally publicly said that about himself pretty much. But the fact remains, he's still an incredible driver, and I think it shows just how good Charles Leclerc is. He really, you give him a top car, I really do think he'll win a world championship. But whether he's going to get that Ferrari is another question.
Good point there. I think for me, it would be Alex Albon against Carlos Sainz. It's a really, really strong performer there. Just give some love to the people at the back of the field, and it's really close at the front between your teammates. So that's it for our show today. Grid Talk is available on YouTube as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search for Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows, previews, reactions, and race results and interviews as well. Thank you again. Huge thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. So if you want to support the show further, why not sign up for Patreon for some more exclusive content? Also, make sure you subscribe and be the first to know when each episode goes live. We will continue to bring you content through the summer break, so keep your eyes peeled for Grid Talk. Thank you very much, and goodbye.